think we have people joining us now. Welcome to the webinar this morning. We're really excited to have you all here. My name is Sarah Kurz. I'm just going to get us started for a little bit of orientation on Zoom. Panelists are all on video right now, so the folks you see on the screen are the folks that you'll be hearing from throughout the program. Attendees are not on video, but we really encourage you to use the chat function on Zoom at any point to share questions. And we would invite you now to feel free to add your name in the chat window, your organization, or what brings you here today. If you're interested in sharing that with the group, we'd love to see that. And we're going to get started in just a moment. If you have questions, you can also put them in the chat, or any technical difficulties, feel free to put them there. Because this is a webinar, there's also a Q&A button down below. We would rather use the chat button, but we'll find your questions either way. Please feel free to use that throughout the meeting, because we are really excited to have a discussion later in the agenda to hear from you all what your questions are about the local media system and how philanthropy is engaging in it. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to introduce Rose Community Foundation's President and CEO, Lindy Eigenvalent.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to have you with us for this conversation, and very, very thankful to our guest panelists for the insights they'll be sharing with us today. Rose Community Foundation's connection to today's topic comes from multiple angles, but the first one is very personal. I set my sights on a journalism career when I was 12 years old, because carrying the multi-generational trauma of the Holocaust, I believed in the power of information to focus a bright light on injustice, tyranny, and inhumanity, and that an informed citizenry was key to protecting our democracy. But when I got my master's in journalism 24 years ago, cable news had not yet reached the level of disruption and division with which we're now all too familiar. The internet had not yet decimated 2 newspaper towns, and social media was not yet on the radar screen. When I transitioned into government and politics early in my career, I saw firsthand the critical role of a robust and competitive local media ecosystem in keeping people informed of the issues that impact their lives, in holding government and candidates accountable, and in fostering a healthy civic dialogue. Here in Colorado, as you well know, Tabor has delegated responsibility for complex fiscal policy to the voters, making an informed and engaged citizenry all the more critical. But in our current world, where we often self-select so much of what we hear, facts are often lost, and shared truths are increasingly few and far between. And when market forces threaten the sustainability of local journalism, when profit-driven hedge funds or social media giants control the narratives we consume, we lose the community stories that remind us to have compassion for our neighbors, to engage in local elections, to follow public health orders, and to connect with people whose lives and opinions may be different from our own. At Rose Community Foundation, we are committed to advancing inclusive, engaged, and equitable Greater Denver communities, a key component of which is promoting inclusive civic engagement for the betterment of public discourse and community connectivity and participation. So we were absolutely thrilled when our friends at Gates Family Foundation brought together community partners invested in the future of Colorado's local journalism ecosystem for a collaboration that would become the Colorado Media Project. Melissa Davis is joining us today and will speak more about Colorado Media Project's work, which Rose is proud to both fiscally sponsor and support. An investment in local media is an investment in civil society, civic engagement, and stronger, healthier communities. In a time of extreme polarization, trustworthy local news outlets are critical to ensuring functioning democracy and communities, bridging divides with facts. We know that many of our donor advised fund holders share these interests as they consistently support Colorado Public Radio, Rocky Mountain PBS, Chalkbeat, the Colorado News Collaborative, Colorado Media Project, and other nonprofit journalism initiatives. So with that in mind, I'm excited to introduce Melissa Davis, Chair of the Colorado Media Project and Vice President for Strategic Communications at Gates Family Foundation. Joined by Melissa are representatives from 3 Colorado media organizations who are paving the way for the future of our local media ecosystem. We're thrilled to have them with us today. Melissa, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lindy. It's so inspiring to hear such passion from the head of Rose Community Foundation. You've been such a wonderful partner in all this work since the very beginning. Thanks to Sarah and Katie and the whole team for inviting us here to talk to you today. I thought it might be helpful to share a few slides of context. As Lindy mentioned, there are many nonprofit media outlets that we could have invited to come talk with you, but we wanted to talk a little bit about the business model for local news and why more of the sector is turning toward philanthropy as a partner. Some of you might remember this image from 2018. It's a very visual wake-up call, the Denver Post newsroom illustrating the loss of capacity between May 2013 and April 2018, and really calling on the community for help in a way that made national news that some of you might remember. The Colorado Media Project was launched in response to this call for help by civic leaders, including University of Denver, Gates Family Foundation, Rose, and many more from higher education, philanthropy, business. The goal for CMP from the beginning was to be a center of gravity for a broad community conversation about the future of local news and how we can navigate a path forward that serves all of our communities. Slide 2, please. Early on, we did quite a bit of research just to kind of get a level set that I wanted to share with you. And through our research, we quickly learned that it's not just Denver, not just newspapers that we had to be concerned about. It wasn't just about the decline of capacity in one newspaper. It was really across all media formats. As professional reporters that cover critical information needs of Coloradans, the number was just cut in half over almost a decade. We might not feel this because there's still quite a lot, those of us who live and work in Denver, there's still a lot of state capitol coverage. There's been the emergence of the Colorado Sun. CPR is now one of the biggest, if not the biggest newsroom in the state. But where this is really felt is in small towns and suburbs across Colorado and in communities that don't always have a reliable source of local news. And as you know, meanwhile, our state's population and economy have exploded during this period of decline for local news. Next slide, please. So why is this happening? Quickly, in 2 slides, this one slide, the business model for journalism is broken. 20 years ago, local advertising sustained local news outlets and subsidized the creation of civically important content. Circulation, though, has never accounted for more than about 20% of revenue. And digital ad spending is now eclipsing all other media, and a lot of that revenue going to Google and Facebook. About 60 to 70% of the US digital ad market is now controlled by the digital duopoly, as it's called. And so this is just kind of local news just has a really hard time competing. Next slide. So why is this important? Losing independent local news coverage hurts local communities. We know this not just anecdotally, but through lots of research, which you can access on our website if you're interested under local news as a public good. If you don't mind clicking through some of the declining civic engagement, political polarization, less informed voters, fewer political candidates, higher government costs, and slower economic growth are all research. There's research behind each of these harms when local news goes away. So last slide, who you're going to hear from in just a moment represents newspaper publishers that are serving very important communities in our state. And the reason that we care about who's these newspapers is that they're still producing the lion's share of original local coverage. So when you really think about the public good of local news, a lot of it starts with newspapers and public media. I will mention that a lot of the radio and television and online is nonprofit news and public media that is producing these important stories for us, which brings us to our panel. So if we can take the slides down, see everyone's faces. Hi, everyone. These local news leaders are not only hanging on, but thriving, and they are all serving really important segments of Denver and the Front Range community. Even though philanthropy is playing a bigger role as partner in all three of these newsrooms. So I'd like to now invite each of our panelists to introduce him or herself and briefly tell us a little bit about who you serve and the role that you are playing in ensuring that Colorado communities have access to trustworthy and culturally relevant information. We'll start with B.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this very important webinar. My name is Rosalind Harris, better known as B. I have been publishing the award-winning Denver Urban Spectrum since 1987. We have been spreading the news about people of color for 35 years. For the last 3.5 decades, DUS has built a solid reputation on dedicated partnerships, establishing trust and developing a foundation for integrity within our communities, readers, and supporters. Our monthly publication provides printed and digital options featuring local and national news, and we are committed to continually serve the communities of color.
Great, thanks, B. Jesus, we'll go to you. You're on mute, Jesus.
Okay, what happened now? Okay, my name is Jesus Sanchez. I am the editor of El Comercio de Colorado newspaper. We work as a multimedia platform. I have been related with this media since 2011, first working as an editor, and then after 2019 as an owner, an editor and the owner. Our idea is to produce high quality material to first, second, and third generation, Hispanic generations. But this is one approach, but in reality, we are reaching culturally Hispanic people of any generation. Because the idea is that to engage people who have some connection with the Hispanic community, and then to put them in the mainstream media content related with those communities.
Great, thanks, Jesus. And Linda.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Linda Carpio Shapley. I'm publisher of Colorado Community Media, which is a chain of small suburban weeklies and monthlies that go from Fort Lupton up north in Weld County all the way down to Castle Rock, and from Evergreen in Jefferson County and Clear Creek County all the way to Elbert County. So essentially, our readership are these number of suburbs and the places where people are moving and growing, and we want to make sure that we're covering those communities. There's been thought that if our publications went away, news deserts would pop up all over this metro area, which is something that we are working hard to avoid.
Great, and thanks to all of you for your work there. Can you talk a little bit about that news desert issue and kind of the change in the sector and kind of the reduction in force? How has the reduction in original reporting impacted your your readers, your outlets, and how can you talk a little bit about how you're dealing with that both within your newsroom and also kind of through collaboration?
Who are you looking to speak? You're on mute.
I'll ask anyone that question can speak up, but Linda, you want to get us started?
I'll start that off, very similar to how, when we talk about the fact that, with covering these suburban communities, I was at the Denver Post actually in that 2013 picture, and was one of the empty spaces in the 2018 picture. And it used to be that in the Denver Post newsroom, in the Rocky Mountain newsroom, we had dedicated suburban reporters. We had, 10 people that were covering every area of the what was going on in Arvada, what was going on in Littleton, all over the place. And when the newsrooms shrunk, that all just went away. They have one or maybe two people who are dedicated to looking for the news that's in the suburban area where there's millions of people who live. So, it became a place of where, people in Arvada weren't learning about what was happening with Arvada City Council, or there was somebody in Douglas County who wasn't hearing about what was happening with the Douglas County commissioners. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we're staying strong in those areas and continuing to cover the governmental and the special district and those various agencies, and also just talking with the businesses that happen there.
Do you want to jump in?
Yes, I will. Well, we've always had a pretty much small newsroom, but I'd like to just talk about over the last couple of years. In the last several years, the social media has impacted, I won't say the social media, but the internet has impacted our newsroom quite a bit. But the last couple of years, everyone knows that COVID has really impacted, I think, all of the writers and the reporters. And I do remember when, writers would go out and, they'd get excited, even our writers, they'd go out to cover an event or a press conference. They'd have their recorder, and a camera if they didn't have a photographer. But since COVID and the technological changes, which includes the social media platforms, it has reduced and shrank the reporters, not allowing them to continue, to continue their craft. I kind of think about Susan Green. Everyone knows Susan. And during COVID, I remember talking to her, and she was covering a story, but she felt so uncomfortable because of, the well-being of herself, being out covering a story. So I think that, with the COVID affected, it affected so many of the writers. But I think, though, as far as the technological changes, social media has opened the doors for so much more. It has opened the doors for disinformation and misinformation, which is very unfortunate because it's guiding minds, and mostly the young people, to be influenced by untruths, making it difficult for them to make sound decisions, that may impact their life and their family and ultimately their community. So, the last couple of years, it's been kind of, it has been a struggle for across the board, for small publications, larger publications, and huge publications. We saw that with, with the Daily Denver Post and Rocky Mountain News, what's going on there.
B, you bring up a good point about mis and disinformation. And I know you and Jesus both had some really great coverage dealing with questions that your readers would have about the virus and the vaccine. Colorado Media Project and Rose Community Foundation in particular have supported some grants to both of your newsrooms during the COVID coverage era. Can you talk a little bit about what you were hearing in terms of mis and disinformation, or more importantly, how you dealt with it through your publications to answer questions and kind of a reportorial way.
Okay, but it's important to clarify that for us, when we saw the changes in the general daily news, like Denver Post, who have now a shorter coverage, for us, it represents an opportunity because we start covering some areas that in the past was part of Denver Post. So it takes responsibility because we assume that we need to cover, for example, I put an example, how to cover public schools like DPS or Adam 14, which have a huge concentration of Hispanic students. So we need to cover this gap. And then we start covering these areas that now there were no more attention of the Denver Post because they couldn't go in depth to this particular community. So we start developing areas or specific coverages in like education or employment, focus on that. Based on this opportunity of the general change of the market. So for us, it will be understanding what is happening and get filling this gap. So this is one part. The other part related with misinformation is also part of that. When we produce the content, we need to have in mind providing or using sources. And the best example is the pandemic. And then we decided in this project that we make with Colorado Media Project, combine or to get the opinion from the people, what the people is thinking, but also contrast with the expert opinion, and then to create like a dialogue. Because it's important to listen to people, but also it's important that the expert can have the option of talking directly to the people. And then it's a way for dealing with misinformation, because sometimes the people have ideas in their mind that is not have a connection with the reality. And then one example, when the people start talking about the component of the vaccine related with a fetus, so what is we need to get this objection and ask an expert and say, what is happening with that? Why the people or the Catholic Church is talking about that? Explain to us the specific component. What is that? And then we get one epidemiologist, expert on virus, who explain in detail what was the component, so that people can conclude, okay, first of all vaccine have this component, but this is a micro component. And then it is a huge thing that with a specific source can clarify this and avoid more confusion. And then this is part of our role, to connect expert science with normal people with a specific concern of the people. And then this is the way that we approach this kind of stuff.
That's great. It's such a good example, Jesus, and it sounds like it really always starts with listening and hearing what questions people have. And I think all three of you, with your connections to your hyperlocal communities, have established such a high level of trust. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how your newsroom builds trust and civic engagement and kind of creates a center of gravity for civic dialogue? Can you talk a little bit about that? You want to start, B?
Well, I wanted to comment on your last question, actually, when you were talking about the misinformation and the disinformation surrounding COVID. And what we try to do to get our message out. Of course, you know, everyone always talked about the Tuskegee experiment and things like that. And so, I mean, other experiments that happen with the African-American community. So, because, you know, with the support, of, the grants that we receive to get the information out, we were able to, in addition to writing articles, several articles per month, we're a monthly publication, in addition to writing articles and talking about the experiences that our writers experience. Our editor, his mom passed within that first month of March 2020. And then one of our other writers, we've got, it impacted us quite a bit. So it was very important for us to try to get information out, the best information that we can about the vaccine and get vaccinated. We held a town hall meeting. We brought in experts that talked about, pros and the cons, and it was a very good town hall meeting. And then we produced a video of a very prominent entertainer who had died of COVID because he had not got vaccinated. So that's what we did in order to try to clarify some of the misinformation and the disinformation that we had that was circulating within our community. So I hope that answered your question.
It's funny because, I came into as publisher at Colorado Community Media in August of 2021. And one of the first things that we talked about very much so was trust, and that, the reporting that we tried, our reporters, tried to be as clear-eyed as possible in terms of explaining, here's what the issue is regarding vaccines. Here's the information regarding, what we know about COVID, what the health experts are telling us. And certainly, we also reported on the distrust of all of those areas, because those were the conversations that were happening in our community. And we recognized that if those conversations are happening somewhere else, we needed to make sure that we were involved in that conversation and could help provide trusted information. And that trusted information is something that is so key to us. And that the way that people feel like you can gain their trust is that they see themselves represented. Whether that's, it's an area where we talk about it often, about what are the communities that we are not hearing from, who are the people who we're not, being able to cover, and let's go find those folks so that way they feel like they're part of this. And I think that when people feel like they're part of a community, that's when you start to build trust. That, we see it where there's massive distrust on the national level and the national discourse for media. But as you keep going down and into, state into communities, the level of trust continues to go up a little bit. And so we want to make sure that we're living up to that by being as fair and as inclusive as we can as we're finding our coverage.
One example of one thing that we do in this idea of promoting building trust and promoting civil engagement was casually this model that we use with COVID. We create a program every week, 2 hours on Wednesday, with the Adelante Community Development, which is like a community-based organization in Commerce City, and the Latino Research and Policy Center from the Colorado University in Denver. So we made a joint venture, and then we produce 2 hours of program in which the people can call or even be on the camera, normal people with no edition, and the people were able to formulate questions to experts. And then every week for 5 months, we have every Wednesday a different expert answering the question and orienting the people. And then our mission was, after finishing this program, we create some small videos, no more, maybe sometimes there were 7 videos of 2-hour program with no longer than a minute. In addition to that, we published the most important concern and then the answer from the expert on the printed version and online. But this was an example of what was the idea, is that the people be conscious about the they are part of the solution of the problem. They can participate, they can be there and even invite people to be part of that and maybe change their mind or not. But there was a process to which they can be there and understand the issue and make decision based on information. And we replicate this model. This was in Commerce City, but then we replicate this model for the northern part of the state with the same idea and with the same result, because the people start participating and more people integrate. At the end, what was the intention? That the people made conscious decision based on information.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that example, Jesus. Really good work that you've been doing. This also brings to mind a commonality you all share, which is local ownership. And can you talk a little bit about, the flexibility that you have, be as a publisher for 35 years, Jesus as an owner, and Linda, as a publisher of Colorado Community Media, which is owned by the National Trust and kind of a consortium of philanthropy. So can you talk a little bit about, your publication in terms of why local ownership and control is so important to the decisions you get to make? You want to start, Linda?
So, I coming into this, when I was senior editor at the Post, I moved into senior management in 2011, just as Alden was really starting to exert its ownership. And unfortunately, in the 6 years that I was in senior management, I oversaw 8 layoffs or buyouts. And it was something that was really hard on my heart, just because I could see the strength and the knowledge and the connections just having to leave the building. And it was something that was very tough. And so when I moved into this particular role at Colorado Community Media, I was so heartened by the fact that the National Trust for Local News, the Colorado News Conservancy, which was, founded on the notion of that we are doing everything we can to make sure that local news stays strong, that it stays relevant, that it stays sustainable, that I want to be part of that subject. I want to be part of making sure that we find that solution, which is going to be different depending on the market that you're in. And, so being in that role of saying, we will find ways to grow is such a preferred way of leading a news organization, because I could see it. I could see that, we were expected to have monumental profits while still cutting staff, and that it was just not a way to continue to grow us. And that, my hope and dream is that as we grow stronger, as we show that we have the ability to be sustainable, that we have, great organizations and foundations who are very patient in their investments of us, and that they can help us grow and be strong, just like, great forests of old.
And what about you, B and Jesus? I think you're, strong local businesses contributing to the community, and also using philanthropy for kind of innovation and kind of thinking about what's next for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, but the first part is that we are in the process as a small company and having the challenges of this kind of activity, because we need to be creative, but we need at the same time to be an economically sound production. And also we have a commitment with the community. So we need to create a balance of all of that stuff. And then it will be a helpful tool that we have access to funds like that the Colorado Media Project provide to us in 2021 and in 2022, because it provides us the opportunity of focusing on the main activity, which is create good quality, good news, and serve the community. And then at the same time to create an operation that it is sound, that it can work, it can be sustainable. And then it is, we say you thank you for the help, because you are understanding what is the challenge, and you are helping us to survive and also to move to the next level. And then because this is a very changing industry, and then you need to be able to move to a different kind of activities. For example, I was telling you that I am right now in Washington, D.C. in a convention, or the board of the National Hispanic Association of Publication, of Hispanic Publication. And then I realized that there is a war related with electronic media, related with Google, related with LinkedIn. So we need to understand them, to learn more, to put our media using this kind of tool to move to the next step, to the next level. For this, all challenges is very important, the support that we receive from Colorado Media Project, because we can be there and start moving to the next step.
Can I jump in? Hi, Melissa. Well, I think about, like I said, we've been publishing the Denver Urban Spectrum for 35 years, and it must have been maybe our 10th or 15th anniversary where we actually had a big event, and we had a special guest, and that was Greg Moore. And they were our speakers. It was Greg Moore and Tamara Banks, because she was still on the air. And we actually had them talking about the future of publications. And they talked about now, they actually talked about now the digital age. So we've been watching and growing, and, our connection with the community is quite different. It's more serving the community. I know Linda's is different because it's news, but our community publication focuses on, the community and relevant news that's right there in the community. We really can't scoop anything, with a monthly publication. So, I always tell people you can pick up our publication and you can find information that will inform you, that will educate you, and that will enlighten you, even after, 5-10 years later. So we are, but we still understand that, we've got a readership that wants to pick up our publication, but we still have to go through that growing stage, like Jesus just mentioned. We've got to grow with the times, and with the support, to help us grow, we've got to stay with the digital age. And, we're looking, our future, we're looking at, expanding our narrative with, through digital platform, but while still being a resource as a community publication for our readers. So it's been a challenge, but, with the support of, the community and organizations like CMP and I have to say that CoLab, I have to say that, CMP, the Colorado Press Association, and CoLab, they have been so super. And there's some other ones. And I know Linda had mentioned, Lindy, I think she mentioned Chalkbeat. So I think the collaboration for all the organizations is very, very important, because it's just been evolving, but it's a great journey though.
Awesome. That's a great place to conclude our discussion, and we're going to get to some questions in just a minute. But first, I want to hand it over to Sarah Indick from the Rose Community Foundation.
Thank you, Melissa, B, and Linda, and Jesus. Your work has always been essential for democracy and education and community, and the importance is clearly even greater in this moment. And we appreciate you taking the time, and all of our attendees taking the time to come together for this conversation today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Indick, Vice President of Philanthropic Services at Rose Community Foundation. For those of you on the call who are interested in joining or supporting this work, we wanted to share a few specific practical ways that you can get involved. And then we're going to turn it back over to my colleague, Sarah Kurz, to moderate some questions from the attendees. So please do add your questions in the chat if you have questions for our panel. So the first option is you can donate directly to local nonprofit newsrooms or donate from a donor advised fund. The second to always keep in mind is that for outlets that are not nonprofits, your subscriptions, memberships, sponsorships, advertising, or that of your business is really an important source of revenue and support. You also can look at support for organizations that are working at a systems level to sustain the local journalism landscape, like Colorado Media Project, which is housed at Rose Community Foundation and is a philanthropic initiative to support the people, projects, and organizations who are working together to build a healthier and more equitable local news information ecosystem for all of Colorado. Or the Colorado News Collaborative, a local media resource hub and ideas lab working to strengthen high quality local journalism, support civic engagement, and ensure public accountability. I'm also going to put in the chat a direct link to a great list of local news outlets that is on the Colorado Media Project website, many of which are nonprofits, and many are not and would benefit from your subscriptions as well. It's a list that combines both, but I think it's a really great place to look if you are interested in broadening your local media landscape horizons and learn about some outlets that may be new to you, but could benefit from your support. And probably we could all benefit from their reporting and coverage. So finally, just a reminder that our team at Rose Community Foundation is available to help provide resources and support for your giving if you are trying to make thoughtful decisions about how your philanthropy can be impactful in this space. So please reach out to us anytime. And now I'll hand it back to Sarah Kurz for questions from our attendees.
Thanks, Sarah. And for everyone on the call, feel free to keep adding questions. If we run out of time, we'll try to follow up with you all over email individually. And we'll also be sharing this entire webinar, the recording of it, on our website. And we'd be happy to have conversations, as Sarah said, about additional ways that you might be able to engage with this work. So the first question I'll take from the participants is a question about the sort of demographic trends you're seeing as journalist outlets and print publications. Curious what the differences you're seeing are among age groups and how they're consuming news. Are younger people looking to local news outlets, or are they relying on national news outlets or on social media, primarily digital? And how are you all relying on social media? I'm sorry, how are your readers relying on social media to substitute the work of local media? Melissa, do you want to start by answering that at sort of a systems level, and then you can hand it off to others?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. This is a great question. And it's probably no surprise to get the answer that, yes, indeed, the next generation and even myself, we get a lot of our local news through our social media feeds. Doesn't mean that social media is producing any of that news. So I think that's an important discrepancy. A lot of times in polls, you'll see people say that they get their news from social media, but a lot of times it's shared, resources from the people that you're looking at, shared stories that are circulating. But it's also important to think about from a systems level. That's why the conversation that's going on at the federal and international level with platform accountability is really important, because the platforms control the algorithms to decide if B or Jesus or Linda's news gets sifted to the top. And so when young people and people of all ages, do get most of their news from scrolling through social media, we need probably better ways to make sure that high quality local news is getting through the other pieces. So that's kind of from a systems level, but I'd love to hear, I know that each of these publishers looks at that quite a lot for their own readership. So I'll hand it over to whoever wants to jump in.
Well, just from, we recognize that, for primarily CCM has been a print focused organization. And that's kind of one of my big goals, is to kind of give it more of a digital presence. And that honestly, it's the thing that we find in many of our communities, is that they don't know who we are. And so and where we need to be in terms of, putting ourselves on Facebook, making sure that if younger readers in particular who are on Instagram, that we are finding ways to be in that community, that we're trying to find ways, to make sure that they find us and that they then have an opportunity to access us in a way. And so we're working on our accessibility, our digital presence in order to make that happen. So that's a big part, that's a big goal for us for sure.
Is it for us? We have invested a lot of time in the previous starting, even a year before the pandemic, on creating more or distributing more content through social media. Now we are fully having all social media updated daily, in addition to our bi-weekly publication or to bi-weekly original content. And our social media have the trend of the general market. You have Twitter for men more interested in sports and decision makers and influencers. Facebook is in Colorado the massive social media for people between 20 years old up. And then Instagram is social media for younger people or younger than 40 years old, focused on most of them women interested in entertainment. But what is important beyond that is that we pay attention to social media and distributing our content there, but the printed publication is already important. And this important not only for adults, it's also for younger people, because and then we have studied the situation. When you have a neighborhood with young families, we put racks there because they will need a paper and then they grab the paper. What is the idea? Is that they are looking for, as a parent, and then they have more of the needs, more global needs. For example, thinking about education or new employment, or even a sport or cultural events. So the newspaper for us, in the past, we start making the printed paper was attractive for people of 40 years up. Now it is maybe 32, 33 years old, which is new, and is related with this idea of giving a family or thinking as an adult, and then they have another perception and are interested in the printed publication.
B, did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's social media. We find that it is very important, and the way to use that is critically important right now to drive, post. Fortunately, we have a young person that is our social media manager, and of course they know the Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and everything else, TikTok. We've also started. We have all those accounts. Do I use them all? No, but the people, the community uses them. But so we found that, in order to, to make the post, it drives them back to our publication, so we've been working on that pretty hard for the last year, because young people and older people, I think so many are just living on social media. And so it is important. It's the younger, I think it's maybe the younger ones. But, there are, and I think every platform is different. I see where Instagram, I think Instagram is right there behind Facebook, and Instagram is more business orientated. So it's a learning process. And I think as we go through it, but the important thing is to drive them back to the publication, to our website, and to our stories that we focused on. So we've been learning that, and we've been focusing on that pretty heavily over the last couple of years.
Thanks for that. Thank you all. And Melissa, thanks for adding that data point in the chat, which is interesting. We probably only have time for one more question, so we'll go through that quickly. Lindy mentioned in her comments that part of Rose Community Foundation's perspective on the importance of local media has to do with having an informed electorate, and that folks vote in local elections, so they need local news to help them understand the implications of that. So as nonpartisan outlets, curious how you're thinking about the upcoming 2022 election and sort of how you play a role as your outlet in ensuring that the community you serve is informed about upcoming elections. I think I'll go Rosalind first, go to Roz, just since she had to go last the last couple times, and then maybe Linda and then Jesus.
What was your question? I think
Oh, sure. We could have Linda go first too. Just curious about sort of how you think about informing your community around elections and the 2022 election.
Well, I'll start, because the way we will is that they reach out to us, and basically we are the go-to publication for the African American community, for the communities of color. So it's not almost like a no-brainer. If we want to reach our market, they reach out to us, and we extend
You are having a little trouble hearing you. I think your signal may be going out. If you want to go off camera, that may help. Why don't we go to Linda while B is hopefully getting her connection back on?
It's my approach is very similar to B's, in that essentially, we are the primary news organization in the new 8th congressional district. And so we see that there's a real opportunity to make sure that the voters in that community, in those areas up here in the north where I live, that we have the ability to kind of like provide information about the candidates, that we are in front of them in that way, that, we're planning election guides for all of our communities, and that way people know here's where these candidates stand. There's a primary, both sides are contested I should say both parties have contested candidates for their primaries in June. So we want to make sure that everybody is, fully informed as to who's running, what their stances are, and we want to ask them the hard questions to make sure that that they're not just putting out messaging without whatever level of just trying to say what people want to hear. So that's certainly a big part of our approach, is that we recognize there's going to be a lot of contested races, and we want to make sure that people know they need to be looking to us in order to help discern, like, here's where everybody's standing.
Thanks for that. Welcome back. Sorry you dropped off. Hey, please go ahead, and then we.
Okay. Related with political participation, we have three kind of mission there. One is that, as the panelists say, we also sit with each political option or each candidate and make them to tell us their story and their platform with each one. Even we sit then with a tamale, and then we sit with them in English, and then we make a translation for each of the candidates in all levels. We spend hours and hours doing that, but because the idea is that the people get an informed idea of all sizes and all issue in each run. This is one thing. The other part is that we need to provide like 101 articles, because we need to teach people, first of all, to become citizens, the people who can be citizens, and educate the people to go through this process from the beginning to realize that you can be citizen and then go through all of this process. It means taking the classes, taking the exam, etc., and then to register to vote, and then to explain the meaning of each run. For example, now we have in a season of electing second seat for Senate for Colorado. We need to explain what are the basic tasks of one senator and all the basic stuff, which is like an 101, and this is the name of the section, 101 on politics, and all levels, even from the sheriff, when you can elect the sheriff, or you can elect a judge, a local judge, all level, because it's a part of the idea. We have for years we have been collaborating with the Secretary of State to get this content, which is in most of the case in the blue books, but we receive all of that, and we were publishing through the year, helping the process, the people to be conscious about the idea of the value of voting. This is one part. And then the other is entering this political debate, being there in the issue, and also with the approach of promoting dialogue, because we don't support any candidate, because our mission is to have the opportunity of having connection with all and make them to communicate with the Hispanic people.
Thank you for that. B, sorry you're having technical difficulties. Is there a final word you wanted to add? We're almost out of time.
I think I'm okay. I don't want to get, my internet is, I don't know, it says it's a little unstable right now for some reason.
No problem. We've all been there.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to participate, in this, on this webinar.
Well, thank you all. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here with us today. We're really excited to hear from you all. And thank you to the staff at Rose Community Foundations who've worked behind the scenes to pull this together. And really to all of our attendees today, thank you for joining us. We're excited that you share our interest and excitement in this issue, and look forward to hearing from you about how we might be able to support you moving forward. Thanks everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.